Welcome to Wood Island Lighthouse. The lighthouse was commissioned by Thomas Jefferson in 1808 and is one of the oldest lighthouses in Maine. The original tower was an octagonal wooden structure that rotted away by 1839, so that the tower that we have over here was built in 1839 out of Biddeford granite. The house was built in 1859, and we know this is the original house because when we did the exterior renovation of the house in 2012, we discovered the original outline of the gable roof that we see in 1859 pictures underneath the shingles. The house as it stands right now had an additional bedroom put on up here and the Dutch colonial roof in 1906, and so it's 1906 that we have used as our restoration date for the lighthouse. Well, welcome to the living room, and this of course was the heart of the house when the family lived here. Virtually all of the furniture in this room has been donated by various friends of Wood Island Lighthouse, and we're going to show you a few of the more important artifacts. We have here copies of the logbooks that were kept by Charles Albert Burke from 1907, which is the earliest one we were able to get, through 1914, when he left this to go to his next lighthouse. And we learned a lot from reading the daily events that he saw as he worked on the lighthouse. We learned, for example, that these radiators that are over here were actually put in and central heating added in 1908. We had thought perhaps that they were here when he arrived in 1906, but found that they had been put in 1908. He also recorded when President Taft's yacht passed by the lighthouse twice, once coming out of Biddeford Pool Harbor where he was visiting relatives. The chair here, I'm going to move over to this chair, is an example of what surprises that you could get when you get donations from good friends. This chair came to us in this condition, and in doing some research, because we thought it was kind of an interesting piece, we found that it was made by the H.C. Dexter Chair Company, and that the catalog of the H.C. Dexter Chair Company was available, and we found a copy of that online, and that our chair was in the 1888 Dexter Chair catalog. So we had it reupholstered, took it all apart, and we've discovered that these chairs are listed online for thousands of dollars. The other thing that's important about this room is the library box. In the 1870s, the lighthouse establishment decided that they needed to provide reading materials for keepers who are particularly on island lighthouses. And so they created these library boxes. This one is a reproduction according to the original plans of the library boxes, and they would change these about every 90 days so that they would have fresh reading materials. There would always be a Bible. There would be current novels and current nonfiction provided, and we have filled our library box with books of the period, some important, some not so important. Now we're in the pantry. The pantry in more recent years had been used as the laundry, and so we didn't know exactly what it looked like. So we asked the last keeper that had been out here as a family, and Lily Burnham told me how this looked when she was here in the 1960s. And so we've tried to replicate it as she described it, with the exception that we've added a soapstone sink by the 1960s, and that it had an enamel sink. We have the pump in the basement. There's a 2,000-gallon cistern. We now have running water, but the pump is here to remind us that they saved rainwater in those days. We also went to the Maine Maritime Museum, and there's a kitchen in the Maine Maritime Museum that dates to approximately the same period of time, and it looks a lot like this with open shelves and a wood countertop. And over in the corner here is a flour bin that they could use to take flour in quantity and roll out dough and that sort of thing. Welcome to the kitchen. It's important to know that every lighthouse keeper brought his own furniture, so we don't know exactly how this house looked in 1906 when the restoration, the renovation of the keeper's house was completed. He arrived in 1905 upon the departure of Thomas Henry Orcutt, who had been here since 1888. And so we have furnished according to the period, and almost everything in the house, with a few exceptions, is of the correct period, 1906. We have very few items that actually belong to Charles Albert Burke, but we do have a few, and they have just recently been received. Here in the kitchen, the key thing here is this ice box. It is probably grander than the ice box that might have been here originally. It was a gift to us by some of our volunteers, but it is of the correct period, and it is a McRae ice box. The McRae company invented the insulated ice box and were quite successful with it over the period of time. And this one is somewhat grander than was probably here, and it has in the back another door. And that door was so that the icebox could be lined up against the back wall of the house with a hole built in, so that the iceman could put the ice in from the back door without going into the house. And they advertised this as a savings in cleaning. It also became known as the jealous husband door. We have automated this so that it will actually freeze ice, and so part of our objective has been that we're going to have at some point a working kitchen. So the ice box will work, and over here is a Glenwood stove. The Glenwood stove is slightly out of period. It dates probably to the 1920s, but it has been retrofitted so that it has modern gas fixtures in it, and we could use it as a within the kitchen. The floor is covered with a floor cloth, and we know that there was some kind of covering on the floor from the markings on the wood flooring, and we decided to put something in here which would be appropriate to the period. Even though linoleum was invented in the 1870s, we decided to use something that a lighthouse keeper might have access to. Floor cloths were made out of used sails, and so they would have the sails available and they would paint them. This particular floor cloth was made by our volunteer Amy Robinson, and as you can see, it's quite a beautiful piece. Now we're in the dining room, and a word about the paint. The paint throughout the house is based upon, in part, on things that we found in the house. And in this room, for example, behind a built-in cabinet, we discovered a paint very close to this. And we match it up in a way with the Lighthouse establishment, saying that one of their authorized colors was drab. And so this is our version of drab. We also found in one of the upstairs bedroom a blue color behind one of the radiators, which we know was put in 1908. And so we've painted that bedroom with the blue color that we found behind the radiator. All of the other colors in the house were taken from the 1906 Benjamin Moore color card, which they were kind enough to share with us. So that's how we have decorated the house. We do know that the Lighthouse establishment required that the trim paint always be white. In the dining room here, we've set it up for a family, and It's our hope that someday we may be able to run day programs here where people can sit around the table and learn about some topic. This photograph is interesting in that it is part of a panoramic picture of Bideford Pool that was taken in the 19th century, and this is the section that shows Wood Island from the southern side of the island. You can see the lighthouse is here. You can see a fence. The lighthouse property is 8 acres at the end of the 35-acre island, and you can see the remains of the fence in this photograph. And they basically had to farm the property. There was a barn, and they had to feed themselves as best they could because they didn't get off the island very often. But also, in the background, we see that there is some other cleared land here beyond the fence. There is a sailing ship, which is quite beautiful in this picture, but also that there are a number of houses on this side of the island, so that this was not the barren place left over for the birds and deer that you see right now. In 2019, we were fortunate enough to meet the granddaughter of Charles and Carrie Burke. And we have received, as a result, a number of items that were out here at Wood Island at the time that they were first married. And this one is sort of our pride and joy. It's a sextant that Charles Albert Burke used when he was out here. And it's a beautiful piece, and it's in a wooden case, and we're delighted to have it, along with the many other small items that we've received from Miss Burke. We thank her. This is the master bedroom, and this is an antique quilt that has been donated to us. Most of the furniture in this room was taken from a cottage in Ocean Park, Maine, and is of the correct period. And over here, we have the washstand, and we've set it up as if Carrie Burke was perhaps here, and her shoes are on the floor, and some stockings are hung on the rocking chair. Charles Albert Burke married Carrie in 1904, and he moved here in 1905. She probably did not come for a few months afterwards because the house was under renovation, but we really don't know the timing of her arrival here. We do know that in 1908 they had twin boys, Wallace and Wyatt, and so we've furnished this room as it might have been in 1908 after the boys arrived. And this is the children's room, and we show some blocks and other toys and small books that children might have had. We have a number of these small books. And so this is the Wallace and Wyatt room in the house. And the blue paint is the paint that we found behind the radiator when we did our restoration. We call this room the orchid bedroom, in part because of this bed that we have here. Thomas Henry Orchid, as I said earlier, was the second longest serving lighthouse keeper. Was from a local family, and the family still is involved in the lighthouse today. This bed was made by Thomas Henry Orchid's son, who was a cabinet maker. It's a rope bed, and it was made for his sister Estelle, and we'll show you a picture in a moment of Estelle and her new husband, Frederick Goldthwaite. And this bed was made as a wedding gift for Estelle and Frederick. Here in these pictures, we have pictures from the family of Sailor the dog, which was Thomas Henry Orchid's Old Scotch Collie, I'm sorry. And Sailor followed Thomas Henry Orchid wherever he went on the island and learned to ring the bell. And this is an etching of Sailor the dog pulling the bell rope. The bell was mounted in the bell tower and had a mechanical striker, but it also had a rope pull. And whenever a ship would go by and blow its steam whistle to salute the lighthouse, the dog would run out and reportedly pull the bell rope 3 times. And here's a picture of Sailor himself, a photograph of Sailor himself with 2 of the Orcutt children. And this is the picture of Estelle Orcutt and Frederick Goldthwaite, who married and were given the bed that's in this room. This quilt that's on the Orcutt bed is a newer period, of course. It was made by Terry Lowell, the wife of one of our keepers and the wife of one of our captains who runs our boat. But as you can see, it is a beautiful quilt that commemorates their time out here at Wood Island. This is a list of the keepers that have been at Wood Island Lighthouse from 1808 until 1986, when they automated the light. The tower is constructed of Biddeford granite on the outside with brick on the inside, and the stairway is quite unusual in that they are cantilevered pieces of granite with the last 13 steps out of cast iron. We're now up in the lantern room of the Lighthouse Tower, and there are many different sources of light for the majority of the years from 1859 until the 1970s. We had a 4th order Fresnel lens up here, and in the 1970s they removed the top of the tower and put in a revolving arrow beacon. And that revolving arrow beacon was regarded as pretty ugly by the local people. They called it the headless light. And so in 1986, when the Coast Guard had automated the light, they refabricated this lantern room so that it would look exactly as the lighthouse had looked for many, many years before. For many years after the automation of the light, we had a VRB 25 light up here, which was lit by a 35-watt halogen bulb. Hard to believe that 35-watt bulb could be seen about 16 miles out to sea. Currently, we have this LED light, which flashes green on the top, white on the bottom, alternately every 10 seconds. And so that's the current light here at Wood Island Lighthouse. From here we can see the whole of Saco Bay and Biddeford Pool Harbor, and on a really clear day you can see Mount Washington in the direction that we're looking right now. We're looking down on the oil house, which was built in 1903 when they switched over from natural oils like whale oil and canola oil. They used kerosene, and kerosene was considered to be more flammable than the previous natural oils. And so they built lighthouse oil houses at that time that had to be at least 100 feet away from any building. So this is our oil house, and you can see that it's a beautiful Greek Revival design, and many others look very similar, but ours is built with native stone and therefore is quite unique.